So in preparation for the Net 125 final exams, remember there are two. We have two different review activities that you can complete to help you prepare for next week's final exams. For the questions-based exam in the Cisco Networking Academy, there's this link here under the Net 125 review section in Moodle. This hyperlink will take you to the Cisco Networking Academy or NetAcad for you to log in. And under the review section in NetAcad, there will be a link that says Practice Final Exam. You can click on that to prepare for the questions-based final exam. It'll be very similar to our chapter exams that we've completed earlier in the semester. There's also a hands-on final exam. So the practice hands-on final exam, we have a Intro to Networking exam review instructions. You can download those. I also included a filled out version of the same document in a PDF, and it shows how we complete the work for subnetting and everything like that along the way, as well as this packet tracer file. So make sure you download that. So I'm going to open up the packet tracer and the subnetting notes and documentation here so you can see exactly what to do as we go along the lab. So over to the left, I've got the packet tracer file open. Over to the right, again, I have the instructions and the subnetting work completed. So on the third page is really page one of the networking exam review instructions. It says to subnet 172.180.100.0 into two different networks. So on those two different networks, we've got a main campus subnet that needs 125 hosts, and we have a data center subnet that needs 20 hosts. Now remember, no matter how many subnets you need, the first thing you need to do is reorder them from greatest to least. So we want to start with the main campus subnet because it needs the most host requirements or devices or addresses. It needs 125. Then we want to move to the data center subnet, which only needs 20. If you had more than these two, remember you want to order them from greatest to least in numerical order. No matter which one is listed first on your instruction file, you want to reorder them according to the greatest amount of host and then going down in numerical order all the way to the least amount of host. So on page 1 and 2, I show exactly what we did to subnet that out. And you can print this out as is available in Moodle. So you start with 172.180.100.0. We know that's our starting address. You can throw away the default subnet mask there. And what we're trying to figure out is how many bits or placeholders do we need to borrow to create our network of at least 125 hosts here. That's the requirement. That's the least amount. So we set that 2 to the n is greater than or equal to minus 2 is greater than or so 2 to the n minus 2 is greater than or equal to 125, and 2 to the 7 would give us 128 minus 2, which is 126. So we are just greater than 125, so that's good. We don't want to be too much, right? We don't want to go up to barring 8, and barring 6 would not give us enough. So where we draw our line, you can see right here, right? So to the right of that line, we should have 7 bits used or borrowed, and I like to put little dots over mine, and you look directly to the left of that line to that 128 number. That is what we are incrementing by. So if we start at 172.180.100.0, the start of our next subnet, if we're incrementing by 128, will be 172.180.100.128. So do not accidentally end your first subnet at .128. When you're incrementing, remember that's the start of your next one. Or if you do count them out or write them out, if you start at 0 and go to .127, you end up having 128 addresses in that subnet. So our starting or our network address is .0. Our ending is .127, okay? Again, 0 to .127 is 128 addresses if you start counting at 0. Our subnet mask, you add everything to the left of that line there. So again, we're in the 4th octet, so the first 3 sections are all 255, and then you're only changing that last number to .128, okay? So we're in the 4th octet here. You could also write it in slash notation, which is or/25. The usable addresses start at .1, so one after your network address, and it ends at .126 or one before your broadcast or ending address. Remember, important note, you cannot assign a network or a broadcast address to an actual device. Those are just there for identification purposes. So the start of my next subnet is going to be .128. So I take that down here to the data center subnet, and I need 20 hosts. So again, I start with the 2 to the n minus 2 is greater than or equal to my host requirements, which is 20. And I'm going to use 5 for my n or exponent here. That gives me 32 minus 2, which is 30 is greater than or equal to 20. Again, I could not use 4 because 2 to the 4 is only 16. That wouldn't give us enough. Then I did not want to use 6 there for my n value because that give me too many. So just enough is 5 right there. So again, I'm starting with the 128 there because that's one after my ending of my previous subnet. Okay. And you don't want to overlap these. So the most common mistake I see is people go back and start at 0. Don't do that. Remember, they cannot overlap. Now, it is important also to get the starting and ending of each one right because they are sequential in order and go after one another. So if you mess up one, you're going to mess them all up. So with this one, again, we are setting that n value to 5. So we want to draw a line here, right where they're in between the 32 and the 16. So you get 5 bits borrowed to the right of that line we draw. And to the left of that line is the number 32. That's the important increment value there. So we're incrementing by 32. So the start of my next subnet, if you had one, would have been 160. We don't need another one, but that's what it would be if you added 32 to 128. Now again, if you start counting at 128 and you count 32 addresses, including the .128, so 128, 129, 130, 131, so on, all the way till you get to 159, that will be 32 addresses. So it's a little bit different when you're adding and including that first number, okay? So 128 to .159 is 32 addresses there. A lot of students may come up with other rules like, hey, if you're in the 4th octet, you can add one less than what that increment value is to your start. So instead of 32, you add 31 to 128 and you get 159. So that'll actually work if you're in the 4th octet. But again, if you don't think about it that way, that's okay. Just an alternative way to think about it. Our subnet mask there is, again, we're in the 4th octet, so the first 3 sections of our subnet mask are all 255. Then we add everything to the left of that line there, so 128, 64, and 32, and we get 224. Our usable addresses are from .129 to .158. So again, one after the start and one before the end. Okay, so make sure you go through and look at that. Now, that's covering step 1. Step 2 is assigning them. So you see I have it written down up here at the top. So it says default gateway, use the last usable IP address. So you want to go to that main campus subnet and say, okay, all right, we're starting at .0, ending at .127. Our usable are .1 to 126. So if it says use the last usable, that means .126 is going to be my address here for, and I wrote that down, for G00 on the NCC router. Put the subnet mask there, and it does not need a default gateway because this is the default gateway. All right, the NCC campus switch, second to last usable IP address. Again, I have that in there. The second to last usable will be .125, one before the last one. And then the first usable for the faculty PC and second usable for the student laptop PC, you have listed there. The first and second usable from, again, that list, same subnet mask. And then you want to make sure you put the default gateway. Remember, the default gateway is the IP address of that interface on the router. So make sure you put that in there. Then you do the same thing for the data center subnet, right? The last usable IP address is G01 on the router. So the last usable is 158. So you'll see that here under G01 is 158. The subnet mask is different than our other network, so make sure you put that in there. And then the second to last usable is .157 for the data center VLAN interface. And then the first usable in that particular subnet is .129. Again, make sure you put the default gateways appropriate, which are .158, which was the interface on the router. So it is really important that you fill that out because it'll make it so much easier in a minute when we start configuring these devices. Now, step 3, we're going to cable the devices together. So hint, all these will be copper straight through. So I'm going to go grab a copper straight through, and it says to cable the G00 interface. So I'm going to go to the router, G00, and I'm going to cable that to the NCC campus switch. You can use either G01 or G02 on the switch end, but you must use G00 on the router end. Okay, so G00 on the router end, we'll use G01 on the switch end. If we have more switch configurations going on, that may matter, but we don't have that in this particular scenario. On the NCC router, again, we're going to do G01 this time on the router end, and we're going to do G01 on the data center switch. Now, again, you can put little notes for yourself, like this is G01 over here. This is G00 on this side, just to help you. You could also put a box around each network, right? We've done that a few times. Put a box around that one that's blue, and let's put a red box around the other one. All right, so we can separate them and you can name them. So this is my main campus subnet. Over here is my data center subnet. Again, just making notes for yourself to make this as easy as possible. Then we want to cable our web servers fast Ethernet 0. You can pick any fast Ethernet port on this switch. Again, if we had some switch configurations going on, like for the port, then we will do that in another semester, but right now it doesn't matter. Any fast Ethernet port will work. And same thing, any fast Ethernet port from the switch to the fast Ethernet port on the PC, the faculty PC, and any fast Ethernet port from the campus switch to the student laptop fast Ethernet 0. You'll see that they're red on the router, and that's because we haven't configured them yet. So you'll want to go through and configure the host name, console password, telnet, encrypted user password, and banner on each one of these devices. So it tells me to configure a host name. Let me zoom in here. So here on the NCC router, we'll go to config mode, and I'll do a host name of NCC router. You could put dashes or underscores in there if you wanted to, but it all has to be one word. Then you'll set a line console password, so line console 0 of Cisco, and make sure you type login. Then we'll set a VTY login for telnet, password Cisco, login. Then we're going to, and again, VTY04 means 5 people can log in. They get assigned channel numbers when they log in there. That's plenty. Then we'll set a enable secret of class. That's an encrypted user exec, privileged exec mode password that it'll prompt you for. So make sure you remember it. Service password dash encryption for encrypting any plain text passwords in our show run file. We'll also set a banner or message of the day. I am preparing for my Cisco exam, and you can put that in quotation marks there. Okay, so again, that takes care of all of these steps right here. And you'll want to go do that for the router and both of the switches. All right, so see if you can repeat these same steps on both of the switches. All right, so the next step in step 5 tells us to configure G00 and G01 with the correct addressing. So again, that's where we want to go back up and reference our chart here that we filled in. And again, that's why it's important to fill it in correctly. And we're using 172.180.100.126, 255.255.255.128 for G00. That's the right side of the router that goes to the campus switch. And then 172.180.100.158, 255.255.255.224 for G01, or the left side of the router, which goes to the data center switch. So here we'll do interface G00, IP add 172, whoops, IP add 172.180.100.126.255.255.255.128. You could also put a description for yourself later and put connection to right side NC or campus switch, right? And then type in no shutdown so it'll turn on. Make sure you type in no shutdown. Then if we go to the other side, we do interface G01, IP add 172.180.100.1, let's see, 158 there. 255, 255, 255, 224. You can put a description, connection to left side data center switch, and then no shutdown. Okay, so both of those are now on and configuring themselves. You want to go make sure you put the default gateway and interface VLAN on both switches. That's our next step. So to do that, again, IP default dash gateway, and then the default gateway address. So for this left side, G01 would be the default gateway for the web server. So that's going to be 172.180.100.158 that we just assigned. Okay. And if you go to the other switch, IP default dash gateway, again, that should be right here, G00 that we assigned to the NCC router should be the default gateway for everything on that right side of that network. So that was 172.180.100.126. Okay. Then we're going to set the interface VLAN 1 addressing. So we'll do interface VLAN 1, IP add. From our chart, it was the second to last usable host on the, we're on the campus switch right now. So it's .125. So 172.180.100.125, 255, 255, 255, 128, and no shutdown. Okay. Then you want to go do the same thing for the data center switch here. Interface VLAN 1, IP add 172.180.100. Looks like 157. And 255, 255, 255, 224 on that side, and no shutdown. Remember, the interface VLAN 1 for the switches, because they can't accept, it's a regular layer 2 switch, they cannot accept an IP address unless you're putting like a default gateway, but they can't accept an IP address on any interface. If you wanted to remote into this switch, you would have to have an interface VLAN to be able to remote into that address if you were not next to it. Okay. Then lastly, we're going to save all of our configurations. Remember, copy, run, start. If you're not in where it just has a pound symbol or a hashtag, you do copy, run, start, enter, enter. Or you could exit all the way out where it's just you're in their privilege exec mode, and you can do copy, run, start. Okay. So now we're going to go configure these on the end devices. So here, desktop, IP configuration for the server, it was .129. So 172.180.100.129. The subnet mask it suggests is not right, so make sure you change that. Remember, all the devices in the same network should share the same default gateway, which is .158. That's the router. Okay, the default gateway is G01 here on the router for all these devices, the switch and the server. That's the default gateway, and everybody should have the same subnet mask, which was 255, 255, 255, 224. Everybody should have a unique IP address, though, just as long as it falls in that range. Then we're going to go do that same thing for the other network devices, which is the faculty PC. That one's 172.180.100.1. Again, it gives you the wrong subnet mask, so make sure you change it to dot or 255.255.255.128, and then remember this side of the router was .126, that's G00 on the router. Okay, so G00 is the default gateway for the NCC campus switch, faculty PC, and student laptop. And then the student laptop is 172.180.100.2. It was a second usable host. .128, 172.180.100.126. Then you need to ping. So go to the faculty PC, command prompt. You want to ping from the faculty PC all the way over to the web server. So you want to type in the web server's address, which we just did, was .129. You want to see if it replies successfully. And you get good replies after that first one. So that is what we want to see. All right. So that means it made it. You want to do the same thing from the student laptop. Command prompt ping 172.180.100.129. You see we get good replies. Now, if it doesn't get good replies, remember you want to troubleshoot and isolate this. So can the faculty PC, if it can't ping all the way across, can it ping the VLAN interface on the data center switch to ping that? If it can't ping that, then back up another step. Can it ping the other side of the NCC router outside of its network to G01? If it can't ping that, then go to can it ping G00, its own default gateway. If it can't ping that, then you know you may have made a typo on the faculty PC, or maybe you entered G00 wrong on the router. You're trying to isolate where the problem is, right? So you want to do that step by step along the way. And that's pretty much it. So that would have you configure your network. On the real final exam, you'll have a few subnets to create. Make sure you lay it out in your addressing table and make those general housekeeping commands, as well as your IP configurations, test it and save it. If you have any questions, please let me know.